Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Um, hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're so thrilled to have you all joining us today, and I'm super excited for today's topic around how to start customizing construction insights with the data connector. If you do have questions throughout today's webinar, please feel free to add them into the question tool within the GoToWebinar. We will also have time for live Q&A at the end of today's session as well. So feel free to shoot in any questions you may have. Great. So before we get started, I'll give some brief introductions to the speakers on today's call. I'll kick it off. My name is Jadie Fanganello, and I am a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Autodesk. I have been working really closely with the product team who develops our data and analytics features across the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform, as well as BIM 360. So I'm super excited to talk a little bit more today about the data connector tool. But I'm even more excited that we are joined here today by Kim Arrant, who is the Vice President of Business Transformation at APTIM. Kim has over 30 years of experience in environmental remediation and engineering and construction industries, and she truly has a passion for learning, business analysis, process improvement, and problem solving with a special skill for taking ideas to reality. So thrilled to hear her feedback and findings today. And last but not least, we have Joe Fields, who is a senior implementation consultant and former mechanical engineer. Joe has a passion for data and helping customers really visualize key metrics from their construction data so that they can stay informed and run their projects even more effectively. So thank you both for joining me today. Can't wait to get into it and hear from each of you in just a little while. Now, as far as our agenda goes today, first you're going to hear a little bit from me and sort of level set on where we're at in the construction industry today in terms of dealing with data. Then I'll pass it to Kim to give us some background on how APTIM is leveraging data and give us some real life examples. Then we'll hear from Joe, who can give us a little bit more detail into Data Connector and how everyone on this call can actually get started using some of these tools today. So we're all hearing the same things today, and a lot of this is probably not new to anyone on this call. With everything going on a job site, it's easy to have disconnected processes. And as a result, productivity is not where it should be or where it even could be. Additionally, finding the right talent to help get these jobs done is getting increasingly more difficult. In fact, 50% of contractors are concerned about finding experienced craftspeople. There's also challenges with managing innovation, not knowing where to start or what makes the most sense for your specific company. And projects are getting more and more complex. In fact, according to a recent report with FMI, 75% of respondents agree that there's a growing need for making rapid decisions in the field. But when we're talking about technology, it's difficult for project teams to see beyond where they're at right now. And construction productivity is remaining pretty flat, despite having like a $6 billion investment in construction software back in 2018. The stats go on and on, but one thing that we can all agree on is that the industry is going to need to change to start keeping up with all the challenges that it's facing. Now, taking a step back from that big picture of the construction industry, today we're going to focus mainly on data and how we can take data as a small part of the challenges that we face to actually make some change. So why are we starting with data? Construction teams are capturing more data than they ever have before. And with the amount of data activity happening, or just like activity happening daily on a job site, it's easy to see how data can build up and become overwhelming to understand. You may have seen this statistic before, but there's a stat from FMI here that 95% of data generated by this industry is going unused. which means we have a lot of room to improve. And teams don't necessarily need more data, they need more insights that will help them leverage all this data more effectively to improve decision making. So where do we start? The first step is ensuring you have access to all your project data and the right analytics tools to visualize deeper. The Autodesk Construction Cloud platform, as well as BIM 360, have great built-in prediction and analytics capabilities. However, we know that many construction teams still rely on additional business intelligence tools like Power BI or Tableau in tandem with their other construction technologies to evaluate their overall company's performance. So to start, you need to develop a data strategy. Kim is actually going to touch on this a bit more and give some great examples, but I think this is a really foundational way to keep your company focused and set goals so that you're getting what you want out of this effort. Once you get that data strategy up and running, then you can dive into things like leveraging built-in dashboards, creating or sharing custom reports, and finally, customizing your output in a way that's specifically geared toward your company goals. Now, with that, I'm actually going to pass it off to Kim, and she's going to give us some background on her experience with leveraging data and what Aptim is doing. So with that, I will pass it to Kim.
Thanks, Jadie. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you guys about data, my favorite topic. So first, let's start with who is Aptim. So Aptim, is simply said, is a critical infrastructure, environmental, and resiliency firm. Are we a classic construction company or firm? No, we absolutely are not. But is there construction and construction workflow and elements of construction and construction management in almost everything that we do and offer? Absolutely, that is the case. So where we talk about building and we talk about building advantage and we use and we're heavy users of build, it could be like building or constructing a marsh or constructing a landfill or providing temporary repair post a disaster response program. We could be providing, and doing repair and maintenance and a turnaround or the critical infrastructure for some of our industrial clients. No matter where it is, we're offering that resilient solution, and that's what we want to do, is solve problems. So that all being said, you can only imagine how important data is to us, because we are not the typical user and we don't look at data in a typical way. So as Jadie just alluded to, she's absolutely right. The very first thing you have to do is have a strategy. You have to have a plan. Develop a strategy. Let's unpack that word a bit. What is a data strategy? And it simply is that. It's a plan where you design to improve all the ways you're going to acquire, store, and manage and use your data. It requires you to sit down up front and think about, as a team and as a project team, before you ever go to the field, what data do I need to do this work? What data are being generated as I actually perform the work? What people and processes are consumers of these data? So we have a bit of an upstream and downstream sort of element here, right? How will I manage my work? And how will I manage the performance? What determines my success at the end of the day? These are all critical questions, and they're all answered with starting to understand that data strategy and the elements of that strategy. So here's a tool that you guys, some of you may recognize. It's a Lean Six Sigma tool from that toolbox. It's our friend, the SIPOC. So when we start looking at this and look at these opportunities, while this is process improvement, if you look at it, there's an element of what you need, exactly what you need to put structure around this conversation. You have input to the process and you have output of the process. So to use it for data, it would look something like this. Again, suppliers, input, process, output, and consumers or customers, but you start to look at not just what activities are being done, but what data are being generated, what data are needed to pull into the process, to execute the step, what data are generated and going out of that process. So you're starting to understand and define what work is being done and what functionality you need and what data are involved. Here in the middle, with those data elements, you're starting to see the structure of your data strategy and what systems are involved. So with each one of those functions, you're starting to see a system. So what you're doing essentially is you're building a tech stack into your strategy or a series of technology toolkits. Now at Aptum, we view it more as a tech stack, and we from that foundational map, we have built a series of toolkits that enable our people in the field, no matter what they're going to the field to do. So we create our data map from what you just saw, which is a foundation for your system strategy. Align your technology tools to the functionality you need. So what is it you're going to do and what do you need to do, and build your toolkit. What you're looking at here is our toolkit. If you'll hit it, Jadie, one more time, you'll see we're build. So Autodesk Build is a very anchor foundational product for us throughout several of our toolkits. This one you're looking at right here is for construction. The reason we go more tech stack is because we focus on that end user. We focus on best in class. What is the thing that makes them most efficient in the best way possible? Best tool for the job, best fit for purpose tool for the job. And then we worry about looking at the data and how we're going to use the data, integrate those data, and build that transparency to the person that's using, that we have a platform on the back end. So you can see how important it is that we have partners like Autodesk that provide us our data, and Data Connector does just that. So leveraging Data Connector, think about your data, exploit your data. I know typically that has a negative connotation, but in this case, it absolutely does not. Exploit it. Data are valuable beyond the tool or purpose for which it's originally collected. And let's look at one example of that. So let's just take time. We all fill out time because we work and we want to get paid. So one of the primary purposes of payroll and then that time data is payroll, right? But if I begin to integrate that piece of data with other data like quantities, I can start to look at productivity. I can look at the time worked and look at safety and develop safety metrics over time. I can look at daily cost. I can get measures of daily cost and what I'm actually spending on a daily basis. I can do manpower curves. I can do manpower scheduling. I can do better estimating, and I can even get benchmark and historical data back into my estimating, all with that simple hours worked by employee. So it's important to look at all the different ways your data can be used and the value you can wring from it. Valuable data connections are, to me, two different things. We're going to talk a lot today about dashboards, and I know everybody loves a good dashboard. There's that, but data can also be moved from one system to another or one platform to another to forward a workflow. So you can move data from system to system or different places within the platform to actually forward what you're up to. And those are important integrations as well. So here's our first project example. So this particular project, our scope of work was we had to go in and we had to assess more than 200 structures for the repair and the extent of repair that was needed. The procurement was put out that we needed to be able to do that in 30 days. I will tell you, we had build and we sat down with our strategy, we developed our execution strategy, and the project team felt they could actually propose it and get it done within 23 days. So we were going forward, we're doing the job. I just found out from the project manager yesterday that we actually finished 5 days early, even from there, because the entire process was digitized and everything was done within build, using build functionality. But what was even more critical was we were able to pull all of the data from build into other systems and our dashboards that we use to manage over time. So our scope was to assess them, get approval to do the estimates on the estimates to do the construction or release for construction, and then actually manage the construction to completion. So here's how we use the data. Go ahead, Jadie. So from Autodesk Build, we push data into our estimating tool to build out the repair cost estimate so that we could work with and negotiate with our client the cost of repair by building. We also moved data into material management so that we understood, and this is all still data coming from Build, we understood what materials we needed, so basically an MTO, both per building and then overall. So we understood the needs for the materials, and then from there, once we purchase, we'll manage receipt, availability, and issue the material. We also use those estimates that from the data we got from Build to understand our staffing requirements and also to baseline our schedule. And then from there, we were able to integrate data from all of the systems into a Power BI dashboard that then through Data Connector that we were able to manage our daily meetings with our customer and manage the work, manage the daily process, and manage the work of the day or plan of day, POD. So let's look at that dashboard a little more closely. There are several pages to it. I just included one of them for example, but how we used Build and how we used Data Connector to then pull the data from Build told us these things in a dashboard. It enabled us to follow progress. We could status not only by building, but by repair item, because we set up our CSI division, we set up our repair items by CSI division, so we could look at it even by CSI division. We understood completion rate curves. Where are we slow? Who's slowing us down? Where do we need to shift? We understood our productivity by discipline because we did assessments by mechanical, electrical, fire protection. We understood as we talked about our materials that we needed and the building and repair items. We understand when we start doing construction, as we work those off, we'll understand what was constituted rework and where do we have rework. We'll understand, like, working against those punch list items and what was issued for construction, exactly what needs to be done. And then things won't be done that weren't supposed to, or that were never approved. We'll have it very clearly defined. We'll work within the system to get our work accepted by the client. We use the submittal and review process within Build. We manage RFIs within Build, so we understand the status in ball and court. We can see average number of days to closure for each RFI. And that's just data that we're pulling from Build through Data Connector. Here's another example. So we have a project that was in the disaster response venue where we used Build to do site assessments and the feasibility of placement of temporary housing units. So we go to the property and document basically the scope of the installation, what needs to be done to get survivors and applicants in non-congregate sheltering, to make them safe and get them under roof. What we did was we moved data from our intake applicant management case management system through Build to understand what locations and what sites needed assessments. We moved it from there over to understand and match it to an asset and a unit, and then to install that and then provide maintenance to that asset. We also had a dashboard, and this was, trust me, for this project, it was a series of dashboards, but I'm just showing you the one that was mainly aligned to the Autodesk Build data around our site inspections. Again, we understood our productivity, we understood how many we were doing daily, we understood that we had that productivity graph, and we understood how many sites were feasible and how many were not for the program. So here's a little closer look into some of the other the dashboards that we had. So the data tells me completion status of site inspections, the number of feasible sites, as I just mentioned, and our productivity rates. As you can tell, this project now is tailing off. But as we were hot and heavy in those early January 2022 timeframe, we could start to predict our staffing needs and where staff should be placed and how quickly things need to be moved, how many assets that we needed, several things. Driving toward outcome. So that's exactly what data can do for us, right? So here's some other examples I just wanted to share with you around how we have used Build and the data that we pull from Build to drive different processes. So what you're looking at now, for some of you may recognize it, it's just a managing test package, testing and hydro testing and turnover, system turnover. So to do that by drawing, we built our test packages, we statused the test packages by drawing, and through Build, we could watch and see where things were ready for pre-test, where they were ready for hydro, whether they were ready for restoration, and when then collectively they were ready for system turnover. This is all through Build and Data Connector. This one's a little bit different. So this one, this project was soil excavations to remove contamination on various properties. And we have a certain number of properties that we had to manage and do within a certain period of time. So we could actually see like where we stood with regard to cleanup, counts, types, and results. Here's just a typical submittal status. All of you very familiar with the submittal process. We just wanted to be able to look at the data in a little bit different way. And oftentimes, because we do a lot of DoD work, we have clients at very specific formats for how they want to see and manage a submittal register. So the ability to pull data through Data Connector out of Build gives us that flexibility to be able to report it exactly as that client needs to see it. And here's another just of the kinds of data we were able to look at, or analysis we were able to do just based on the data that we pull from Build from the RFI process. And one of those critical things, like, again, this is one that has, it's a bit of an old project now, but our average days to closure at the time when the project was heavy and in production, our contracted turnaround time on RFIs was supposed to be 3 days. And we were able to consistently show the client that they were lagging, and it was 8 days actually. So that was a huge advantage. So let's talk about some lessons learned and key takeaways. So in doing all this, I can't say this enough, is obviously, you guys, you have to plan. You can't just throw software on iPads and say you have Power BI and expect to get the results that you need. You have to sit down and understand how the work is going to be performed and how the data enables that, both in the execution and then what data are being generated as it's being executed that then you can take and leverage to tell you what you need to know. Engage your stakeholders for that planning. Develop your execution strategy, as we talked about. Identify your key metrics and KPIs ahead of time. It's not that you can't change them or add to them, but do as much as you can ahead of time. Understand what your managed elements are. Understand where your risk points are so that you're sure that you have enough data to manage through those. Once you understand the process, as we mentioned before with that tool, overlay your data needs and then track that back to make sure that you're using all the right systems and that you have access to all your data and can bring it into a dashboard or however you need to look at it. And do all that before you ever step foot in the field. And if you think you might need a piece of data, include it. It's very difficult, most of you know that it's very difficult to go back and recreate data that you didn't collect the first time. Ownership is imperative. Roles and responsibilities are imperative in execution. It requires commitment and accountability from the top down and the bottom up. And this is not an IT-based solution. Like, This is an operation, this is a teaming thing between operations, technology, and IT kind of systems. You all need to do this together. It's an infusion of both process and operations and technology. These two things must intersect. Systems must be central to your process and workflow. They must drive how you work and be part of what you do every day. And there can be no external or secondary sources. I hate to say it, but Excel kills us. It'll kill this process quicker than you know. Because you're always going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to introduce doubt to what's showing on the dashboard because you don't know if it's coming from a primary certified data source or if it's something that someone else has added in. You're always going to be in a mode of reconciliation. Identify your key sources in your systems and enforce their use. That will drive standardization in data, accuracy of your data, and the timeliness of your data if you do that. And remember, Power BI is not an application. Power BI is a way, or Tableau or whatever, a dashboard is a way to use and view your data. But you've got a lot to do to make sure that the data you're looking at is good data and that it's valuable to you and it's making the contribution that you need. So again, plan, develop that strategy, use tools like Data Connector to get to your data and get the full value that's there. So let's turn that 95% metric around. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe so that he can take us a little bit deeper into Data Connector itself and help you understand how to use that.
Great, thank you very much, Kim. That was a great run through some good examples there of how to use the Data Connector tool. All right, Data Connector is a tool that lives within the Insight module on the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. It also is in BIM 360 for those users as well. The Data Connector extracts metadata from various features within your projects, including things like issues, forms, sheets, photos, assets, checklists, and many more. And it packages that data up into extractions that can either be manually downloaded, synced into Microsoft Power BI, or you can use our public APIs to programmatically request and fetch the data extracts to send to your data warehouse of choice. Data extracts can be run at an individual project level by project admins, or they can be run at the account level by those with the executive overview access level. Running the extract at the account level provides the data across all projects in the account. Also, users can schedule the extractions to run monthly, weekly, or daily. And with our certified Power BI connector, the data can be scheduled to refresh within Power BI to automate the workflow of keeping your dashboards updated. We also provide a library of Power BI templates to help customers get up and running quickly with built-in relationship mapping and some out-of-the-box metrics so you can gain real value from insights about your data quickly. Next slide, please. And real quick, this is a quick run through of the Power BI connector. So if you do have a newer version of Power BI, the April 22 update or newer, you will have the Autodesk Construction Cloud connector, as you can see here when you go to get more data. When you connect within Power BI, it just asks you what server you want to connect to if you're on the US or the EU server. It'll prompt you to sign in with your Autodesk credentials, and then it will show you the list of accounts that you have access to, and then you can expand that to see all of the tables of information that are within those Data Connector extracts. You can select the tables that you want to load to your dashboards, and then you can either load them in or transform your data as you see fit. But the benefit here is that you can refresh your data automatically within Power BI. If you do have a Power BI license, you can publish your dashboards to the Power BI web service. And then you could also set up that automated schedule refresh on your data within the Power BI service. So it really kind of streamlines the workflow from end to end. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned also, we provide a number of Power BI templates. So in the Data Connector tool, you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner that there is a button for the Power BI template gallery. You can go there to peruse our different templates that we provide. So this is an example of one of them for the reviews workflows within ACC as well as BIM 360. It'll give you some information. You could pull in data quickly and start to visualize that within your dashboards. It has relationship mapping built into it and lots of great metrics. And if you go to the next, walk through this one, there's also an example here for progress tracking. If you're using that particular tool, it will harvest the information out of the progress tracking data set and pull that directly into a Power BI dashboard. You can use these as a great jumpstart for customers just getting started, or even those that are more seasoned. If you're using Power BI, you can use it as a jumpstart to get going with your dashboards and start to tailor and customize this to suit your needs and what you're looking for. And then the next slide, please. And then as Kim showed, some examples, kind of you can take it to the next level. We can bring in either through Power BI or Tableau, Domo, many other different BI tools, can also bring in multiple data sources. So start to harvest data from financial systems, ERP systems, and bring that in, merge that with your build data, and you can start to build some really neat metrics, things like safety, dashboarding around OSHA tracking, stuff like that. We need to know hours worked, number of employees, things like that. And it really can start to elevate what you can do with that data and be able to harness that information. And then go to the next one, please. And then also we can do some more custom visuals. You can start to build out things and look at things like maybe you want to see a heat map of where your common injuries are on your site if you're tracking that information. But really it's the ability to have that information that we want to provide to customers in an easy format that they can update quickly and pull into their dashboards. So with that, I'll hand it back to Jadie for some closing arguments.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Kim, for both giving us some really awesome insights and examples to how people can get started using Data Connector. It's really great. I'm going to close with just this slide here. There's a couple of resources if you're interested in kind of learning more about Data Connector. There are some Learn ACC classes. There's a link here. I'll try to drop that in the chat if I can. If not, we can follow up in email after this webinar with some of these links. As well as the help site has some documented information about getting started and especially using that Power BI connector feature. And then there are a couple blog posts here as well around just how to connect your project data with other business intelligence tools and some of the values that customers are seeing from it. So with that, I think we're going to jump into some Q&A. I have a couple questions here. Please, if you have additional questions, add them into the Q&A box within the GoToWebinar app. But I'll start off with one here, and Joe, I'll direct this one to you. Is the data automatically updated on the dashboard, or do I have to pull the data in each time I need to update?
Yeah, that's a good question. You do need to make sure that you are running the data connector extracts within Insight. You can manually run those, or you can schedule those to be run. If you're using Power BI, the connector is always going to connect to the latest extract. So make sure you've got that schedule set up. And then on the Power BI side, you also need to set up a schedule for your data to be updated automatically as well. So kind of two parts there, but once you have those two set up, you can really automate that workflow and make sure that your dashboards are always up to date.
Awesome.
And I'll add to that like as part of your data strategy, think about how often you need them to be updated. So depending on like the speed of the work that you're doing and how quickly you need to manage it, it could be that once a day is absolutely fine. So that just make that part of your strategy and understand how often you need to refresh.
That's great. Another question here, someone's having trouble getting the data. I'm assuming this is from within Power BI. I'm having trouble getting the data, but Autodesk Construction Cloud is not an option. What should I do? I would assume that this is probably a more technical support question that's specific to that person, but Joe, do you have any tips on that specifically?
Yeah, I would make sure our connector was certified in the April 22 update for Power BI. So if you have an older version of Power BI, make sure you've got that updated. to make sure that's an option in Power BI. If you have an issue with the actual extracts within the Data Connector tool, I would use the question mark in the top right-hand corner within ACC or BIM 360, and that'll give you an option to contact support, and you can get a hold of them to help go through that and get your technical issue resolved.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. There is also a poll question. Sorry, I forgot to announce that. Popping up here if you guys wouldn't mind. If you're interested in learning more on how to get started with just kind of harnessing and leveraging your data, please go ahead and answer that poll question for us. We'll definitely send someone to help. We had a question here about, will the webinar deal with the ability to manage product inventory, like formwork and shoring, and the model in which I'm doing my design in? So like if I'm running low on a certain item and I go in to insert it in the model, I may get a warning telling me I'm out of stock of that item. So I know we didn't dive into that specifically in this webinar. I would assume that depending on the data sets that are available, you could maybe create some type of custom dashboard, but Joe, I'll shoot that one to you as well if you have any other things to add there.
Yeah, I would look towards, if you're looking for more of a responsive, as you're placing model elements, is maybe check with some partners that work with things like Revit and stuff, and they may be able to offer some solutions that could be a little bit more live if you're looking for, as you place something, it's checking for inventory, things like that. But you could certainly get some information through dashboarding to kind of see where you're at with some of that information.
Great.
So I can offer that we use one of y'all's technology partners like IntelliWave SiteSense, and they have integrations that come through Forge that we are able to use with Build, and then also able to see that data in our dashboards. So I know some of their stuff is integrated and you can view in the Navisworks model, but I don't know like exactly what you're doing your 3D work in or how you're doing it, but that might be something to explore.
Great. Thank you both. What resources do you recommend to become proficient in ACC? I would start with the Learn ACC courses. There's a bunch of video tutorial classes that kind of take you through each product and tool within Autodesk Construction Cloud. So that's a great way to start. There's also the help site documentation. If there's like specific questions, you can go to different articles around that. We can share links to some of this as a follow-up email to the webinar as well. Let's see. Are upload options available to push data into Autodesk Construction Cloud cost management?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, we do have a lot of APIs available. I'd recommend going to forge.autodesk.com, and you can browse our API documentation. And the cost tool in particular has a lot of great APIs that you can use to pull and push information if that's what you're looking for to update info in Autodesk Construction Cloud.
Great. Does ACC Data Connector, where are those sounds like they're asking where the Power BI templates are housed. So when you are in the Data Connector tool within Autodesk Construction Cloud, you'll see actually a new gallery view within Data Connector. And in that gallery view, you'll have access to all of the different templates that have been created. And you can download those directly from there. Let's see. Can the Data Connector track asset quantities? I know that you can download asset data. I don't know specifically about quantities.
Yeah, the asset information is included in the Data Connector extract, so you can use it for tracking the quantities, the statuses, and many other attributes of the assets.
And I can vouch that works well. We do that all the time. Asset functionality is awesome. Yeah.
Kim, I'll actually ask this one to you. What would you recommend for small construction owners that would want to get into data leveraging? Like how would you get started with that?
As I look as I look at my data strategy, as you look at your project or look at the types of projects that you do and start to ask the questions that we talked about earlier, and you start to see and pull out that functionality and what you would need, what we actually did, like going through that same thing, is we did a survey. So once we understood those various elements and sort of did an inventory of like what helps you the most, I will admit we are very field focused. So our mission, we call it the digital foreman mission, is to enable the people in the field, because we figure if we make them successful, then the project overall is successful, right? So we actually asked the foreman in the field, and we did a survey, and we said, what would help you the most, or the technicians in the field, what would help you the most on a day-to-day basis? And then we ranked those, and then based on that, we looked at our tool and tool selection, and just started with a few of the things that would move the needle and give us the greatest return on investment right off the bat. And again, always look for partners, like in this case, that give you access, like a build solution or an Autodesk solution where you have access to your data. That is key. They provide reporting tools, and that's great within the system, but to be able to, I think, to broaden that and move forward and give you the most flexibility, always look for that data connector solution and get familiar with it. These guys, I will say too, they've been very helpful to us in providing support. If we have questions, so there's the stuff online that Jadie was talking about, absolutely. But we've gotten a lot of help, just asking questions. Why can't I see this? Why does this and they've been very, very helpful to get us over those humps.
Great.
Very enabling.
Yeah, definitely leverage the resources in-house from the support team. There's a question. Yes, the webinar will be recorded, or was recorded, and it will be shared out with all registrants to this webinar. So you can expect a follow up with that. This might be a question for either Joe or Manu. The Autodesk Construction Cloud says beta in Power BI. When is it no longer going to be a beta?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, that was just a requirement on the initial certification of the connector. We actually have been developing and testing that connector in a preview state before the official certification. So it has been fairly vetted out and worked through, and that's something that we are working with Microsoft to get that removed, since that's been running fairly well for the past several months.
Great. There's an ask to possibly have a physical training to apply to one project. I think that's a great idea, and we can definitely keep that in mind for other times. So thank you for that. And then there's maybe time for one more question. What can you recommend for fabrication to help manage our inventory from beginning to job site? Is there any answer to that, Joe, maybe?
That would probably be something I would look to some of the partner tools. So if you're really looking to kind of analyze your models as you're modeling things out and doing things, you can do some of this in a data connector if you're using, say, assets or progress tracking, for instance, and maybe be able to look at some of that information to be able to track, where things are at. So, kind of depends on the use case, but there may be some options available.
Great. Okay, so I think we're running at the 45 mark of the hour. So I think we're going to end today's call, but thank you everyone for joining us. I think this was a really valuable session. A special thank you to you, Kim and Joe, for stepping in and giving us some great examples. We will be sending out a follow-up email with a recording and some other helpful links as mentioned during the Q&A. And with that, hope everyone has a great rest of your day.